our guest orator, in person of Professor Dr. Patrick L.O. Lumumba, whom in the midst of countless of personal schedule, thought it wise to honor the invitation of the young people of the Republic of Liberia, and he is in our midst tonight. And having done that, we thought that his presence in our country is not only meaningful in terms of the message that he has brought for the country, but that his presence will have transformed the lives of young people in our republic. And so tonight we have gathered to wish him farewell. And so there's a farewell and honoring dinner in honor of our Professor Patrick Lumumba, who has decided to come and help us. Howbeit, the responsibility is on us as young people and as Liberians, as we listen this morning to our orators who were able to drill us through their experiences, but most especially spoke on the importance of genuine peace and reconciliation, a roadmap to 2017 elections. What they were telling us is the fact that we need not to conform to the ideology of the old, that identifying our own issues as young people in our own generation matters. And what that means is that we need to interpret whatever we read and contextualize that in our own setting. So that responsibility is on us as young people, as our guest orator will be finally telling us and giving us his final messages that need to remain with us. Because after he leaves, his message is what probably is going to guide us as we move forward. And so I'll just like for every one of us to put our hands together for our guest orator. So I want to say thank you very much for honoring our invitation. And as you will be here, we're going to listen to our guest orator. We're going to hear other people speak. And of course, we have once on one term as the bare minimum of refreshment for every one of us as we'll be wishing our guests farewell. Thank you very much.
The voice of the President of the Federation of Liberian Youth. For those in Radio Land, we are beaming live from the hall of the Bella Casa Hotel, and your MCs are Martin K. and Collie and Moses Yamia. At this time, we will call on Ambassador D. Momotiro Jr., the Executive Director of Young Ambassadors for Peace, who will do our overview of YAP and Professor Lumumba's visit to the Republic of Liberia. Put your hands together for the Executive Director.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you for the opportunity to have me here. Again, I'd like to say all protocol observed, and let me just extend my thanks and appreciation to have all of us here for this second interaction with my guest, Professor Dr. Patrick Losh Otilo Lumumba. After 5 months of interactions since December, and with our quest to maintaining and supporting the peace process of our country, we thought to engage into an interaction with Professor Dr. Patrick Lumumba. And during our interaction, it was a tough time for me. Like I said this morning, I'm not going to repeat most of the things I said. It was a tough time. We sent countless of invitations by mail. There was no response. And then we sent hard copy of the invitation through DHL and FedEx, and yet there was still no response. And then we then decided to use our legal connections. And in a casual discussion at Berekasa one evening, then Ambassador Federica Pemila Moda then told me, say, Ambassador, I said, Ambassador, we're about to do big one. He said, which one you call big one? I said, we anticipating bringing 3 orators from around the world, but we're still discussing which one to come to Liberia. And then in the quest of that, collectively, we then, in my discussion with the President of the Federation of Liberian Youth, he said, my man, it's not possible to get another orator in Liberia, don't waste your time. And I told him, I have one background in math and physics. My instructor is here, Dr. Jara, who taught me linear algebra. And after, there's something in physics called persistency, break perseverance. You gotta be persistent in your quest. If you give me a problem to solve and you've tried all of the mentor, you can get solution, keep on trying on. And just keep on keeping on, you will still get an answer. And so I got that analogy from the University of Liberia. So I kept persistency, constant. And so luckily for me, early part of May, I then received a mail from Professor Lumumba. And he said in his mail, like I said in just one sentence, he said, when do you want me to come to Liberia? I said, wow. Then God has answered my prayer. I went back to my wife, I said, stop fasting and praying. God has answered the prayer already. So luckily for me, after that short time, I shared with my brother in progress, Fubi Every Hearings. And then he said, my man, I know what you can do, keep on keeping on. And so when he consented, then I sent 2 days. One was in late May, which is now, and then the other one in May, June, the middle part of June. And then he said, June is booked already, don't waste your time. Has almost close to 10 countries to travel in June. And so what we're going to do is, let's see how we can manage May. That was through the discussion, not with him now, to his technical assistant. And so Giuseppe told me, you are lucky to be selected this time, because Prof schedule is lack. So I said, but I'm not lucky, Liberians are lucky, because he come to Liberia to speak to Liberians. And so finally, I was overwhelmed with joy. I told you this morning, when I arrived at the airport yesterday, and Professor Lumumba, and then I got a signal from the VIP that Kenya Airways has landed. And I said, whoa. They said, go to the other side. Who's the host? They were looking for the host. Who's the host? I saw people with big stomach in there, government officials in there, and I came, I said, I'm the host. Then the director of the airport looked at me up and down and said, you the host? He said, man, don't joke here, man. So one of my volunteers said, but that's the man the host. They didn't want anybody there. So luckily for me, when Professor Lumumba came out, and then luckily for me, he saw me. I went to him, I said, yeah, I'm your godfather. He shook my hand and said, thank you for bringing me to Liberia. And then I said, can I lay down and walk on my back? He said, no, that's me. So Liberians around the world, Liberians into this hall, I'd like to tell you that anything you want to do in life, I said it this morning, I have one of my role models, and I will always say, anywhere I go at all times. That is Ambassador Judy Andy. I did not know her from anywhere, no interaction. But in 1996, we used to have the yearly cultural performance festival. And I stopped by one of the galleries and I saw her performing. I stood and she sang some messages. She put out some messages about peace and reconciliation. That drew my passion. I know how to dance too well. I went to culture school. I learned how to dance in culture. I started dancing some ballet dancing around. I started performing. I said, I must one day follow this great icon platform. And here comes Professor Dr. Patrick Lumumba going to speak to you tonight for the second time. Not the same message, but yet on the same, in the same topic that we've been discussing today. Thank you very much. God bless you.
The voice of the Executive Director of Young Ambassadors for Peace. You know, this program is live all around the world, and let me extend our gratitude to KMTV. KMTV has been doing a very great job. As I speak to you now, my inbox is filled with messages from the United States, Africa Coast, and almost everywhere. How can we get Professor Prof. Lumumba? So every nation, almost every nation, not only in Africa, wants to listen to this conscious voice. And we appreciate the fact that he could come to Liberia, he could choose Liberia at such a critical time like this. As we proceed to October 2017, we need to hear a voice of conscience. And Professor Lumumba is an embodiment of the African dream. This is why we are proud to have him in the first African Republic and the second Black Republic in the world. Let's proceed. At this time, permit me, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, to ask Crusaders for Peace for an interlude of music as we proceed. Crusaders for Peace, you are welcome.
Yeah. Ambassador Julie Indy.
Put your hands together again for Crusaders for Peace. We are making progress. We are about to listen to our lone motivational speaker for this section. For this section, our motivational speaker is the financial manager of the Coca-Cola bottling company. He's no one else but Mr. Fubi F.A. Herrens. Put your hands together as we welcome to this stage Mr. Herrens.
All protocol observed. Prof, I'm one of your fans in Liberia, and happy to be here and to also listen to you. I'll be proud to listen to you and learn some lessons. But to our colleagues, especially the young folks in here, there's one question I will pose back to you. It's good to listen to all these fine speeches, but are you willing to wake up tomorrow morning and start to apply them? And the theme for this election, as I always say, what are you negotiating for? And most of the times in this country, capping from Ambassador Andy's song, Pankwa and Goody politician, we always settle for the goodies politician. And I see a lot of folks in here that also settle in that direction. We are at a major crossroad. Are we willing to change the history of this country? Are we willing to direct the next generation of children that are coming up? There are people in this country, there are kids that will not have the opportunity to vote. But we that are voting, our decisions geared towards uplifting their lives and setting the pace. We say 6 years, but it's not actually 6 years. But the 6 years can be 40 years. Because the impact and the laws that are made will live for a longer period. For example, today we are living with a pension law that was last amended in 1988, 29 years ago. And we're still living with the same laws. Other countries right around Africa, if you check the last time Nigeria did horse, I think it was sometime in 2 or 3 years ago. The minimum that they get at pension is 50% of their last 2 years' average salaries. The maximum is around 80%. But for Liberia, we stay benching around 25 minimum and 48 maximum. So pension is like a curse in this country. But we have lawmakers that sit and push pension benefits for themselves. And yet and still we clap for them and we hail them because they bring toilets, hand pumps in our communities as gifts. And yet and still we clap for them. Another election period is around. What are you negotiating for? That's the question. And we ask you all to sit down and rethink. And this is not a palaver discussion question. Every one of us has our own conscience, and at a certain point in time we wake up in the night to use the restroom. And sometimes sleep don't come to us. Are you willing to sit down and talk to yourself at that moment? Ask yourself, what kind of Liberia you intend to see after 2017? When you ask yourself that question, the next thing is, amongst the many candidates, they will always come and knock your door. Who among them can fulfill that Liberia at least 85%? And 70% of our problems, we have the solutions. But most of the times, we sit and wait for government for everything. And we always say, if it is for us, it has to be by us. If Liberia is to change, only Liberians will change Liberia. What are you willing to do to change this country? And one statement you also take, I will say, if you cannot use your current position to touch the lives of others positively, life is not worth living. So are you using your current position to touch the lives of others positively? You don't have to necessarily give money. If you are a car loader in our own sense, are you loading your cars without picking pockets? That's using your current position to touch the lives of others positively. If you're crossing the street and you see a crippled person or a little child, can you hold their hands to help cross the street? That's also using your current position to touch the lives of others positively. If you are in government, are you also using your position not to rob the 4-point-something million people that you are serving? That's also using your current position not to touch, the other positively. This morning I did a Facebook post and I got on a heavy attack by a few of our lawmakers and other guys. We spent $1.5 million US on telephone, on internet, on postage and courier in 1 year. And we cannot account for that, and we cannot even host a domain that costs less than $150 US per year. After you say turn it over to us, we say freedom of information. But yet and still we clap for those people and we see them as gods. And one key note to you, you elect people and don't sit and fold your hands and give them the opportunity to operate anyhow, as and when they want it. And we have launched a current campaign for the reduction of lawmakers' salary and also push for the setup of the Civil Service Commission, our autonomous commission that will be regulating salaries and benefits in government. And we hope that we all will support that. And we think that we need a 30% cut, at least to say, because you pay taxes. Your taxes are not meant to pay salaries and benefits. You must see your taxes working in the hospitals. You must see your taxes working at water and sewer. You must see your taxes working on the roads. You must see your taxes working in the schools. You must see your taxes at work and not to fill pockets of few individuals. So what are you negotiating for in this election? That's the food for thought for you, and I hope you will digest that and use it in making your next decision to look at the children that will not vote in this election. What are you negotiating for? Thank you.
We want to extend our sincere gratitude to our motivational speaker, Mr. Fubi F.A. Herons. What are you negotiating for? The choice all of us, especially youth of Liberia, will make in October will determine the political, social, and economic direction or destiny of this country. So we need to be very careful. Like Professor Prof said, in Africa, we canonize thieves and we demonize people with integrity. It is only in Africa. At this time, we have reached to one of the important ceremonies. The professor traveled from Nairobi, Kenya to Monrovia, Liberia, as a sign of demonstrating our highest appreciation to him for traveling from his country to our country, inspiring us, building national consciousness. YAP, under the leadership of Ambassador Momo Taylor, along with the Federation of Liberian Youth, have thought it wise to officially gown the professor so it can serve as a remembrance. When I was in Liberia, this was what Liberians did for me. So this ceremony is historic, and it will be led by Liberia's cultural ambassador in person of Ambassador Judy Andy. Put your hands together as we welcome the ambassador. Somebody's car is in the driveway, 69068. 69068, your car is in the driveway.
So it's a long process. We're going to perform our traditions, and we brought our chiefs, our elders, and of course the cultural ambassadors going to perform in line with the traditional principles and practices of our country. Thank you. So just watch and see the demonstration.
Please, Prof, permission, please allow the band to play because this is a traditional ceremony and we don't want to make mistake. I thought it was another gown, but if the gown from the traditional leaders, then it's a ceremony. So let the band give us a song.
Iwali Ever since I've been a Kinego. Hey, Dame, I love you, but you too rascal. I say, Dame, I love you, but you too rascal.
Thank you.
Let's sit down. Let's sit down, please. Let's sit down.
Ladies
Please,
and gentlemen,
the other squad to record or you sit down. Go back there.
tonight is a great night for us as Liberians. We just had a network of the Federation of Liberian Youth, the Justice and Peace, JPC, the Crusaders for Peace, as national observers of the elections 2017. Today, we are in this hall with one of the most powerful men of our time. I don't know about you. I know some of us, they will speak to us for days and months to come. But I can assure you, your life will never be the same leaving this hall today. We've heard Professor on radio. We've heard him video via internet. But today, he is sitting in our midst. He came as a Kenyan. He's going back as a Liberian chief. And I am not a prophetess, but I can say this. In the next 1 or 2 years, I will be with you in Kenya, Professor. Let me introduce my people. And whenever you hear Leon during these elections, please remember they are observing the elections and they are national. That's what's important. And thanks to all of our partners in the Carter Center that have helped us this election. This election, I don't know about you. This election will take Liberia at another level. And I want to be a part with peace. So I'm happy. Professor, you have just made my day. You have made life so easy that when you walk to the ballot box, you will think on what Professor said this morning. I have with my delegation here, I ain't just standing here and talking now. I'm taking all the executive director down, and I am speaking as the traditional queen of Liberia. So I have with me the acting chair of the National Council of Chiefs and Elders in this hall, Madam Sita Fofana Sa. Professor, we are changing in Africa. Women are now becoming chiefs. Next, by Madam Sita Fofana Sa is the president of the Governor Council of the Republic of Liberia. Musu Thompson. We have other governors and chiefs sitting at the back. On this delegation, we have the man that brought us up when we were learning how to sing and dance, the former Minister of Information, Culture, and Tourism, Reverend Emmanuel Buya. The Crusaders for Peace Band, the Crusaders for Peace Cultural Troupe, our staff and members of the Crusaders for Peace, a veteran musician, the first Black Liberian musician that opened their own recording studio in Liberia, veteran Tony Kabade. Tony Kabade taught me how to sing. Tony Kabade did the first recording for me, and I'm grateful. So I call him teacher. We will now call the chiefs to please come up. Madam Sita Fufana and Madam Musu Thompson. All the chiefs, please come. Reverend Buya, would you please come? Then we want to call the governor and the traditional leader will walk to bring the professor to us. And we'll do that in song. Thank you. Professor, when you know, in our culture, if you come to Liberia and we refuse to give you cola, then we don't want you here. If you don't see the traditional people, they don't want you. Today we have come to say to you, everything that you have on you is made in Liberia. It's not borrowed, it's made in Liberia. The gown is made out of cotton from the beautiful forests of Lofa County, Nima, and Bom. And the gown, the weaving is done by Liberian women in our various areas in our counties. And of course, the design is made by a Liberian. The very outfit you are wearing, Professor, the outfit says Liberia is Ebola free. That outfit, when there was a lot of stigmatization traveling from borders to borders, we decided to put a fabric together. That is a creative design of your humble and admirer servant, Julie Endi. Liberia is Ebola free. The cotton that you see is made here in Liberia, the weaving done by the Liberian women at Crusaders of Peace Village, and the design is written, made in Liberia. So you are not taking anything from here that is made where? So, and Professor, in the greatness of time, you are visiting Liberia when our president is a female. a woman who made history to bring us as the first female president on this continent. I can assure you that with the empowerment that we have received from our teacher, our president, we have come to honor you to say thank you. Thank you for what you've done for us. Thank you. We appreciate you. And the platform that Madam Sally has given us gave us the opportunity as women to speak anywhere we are called to speak. But I want to read a certificate. Certificate of honor to Professor Dr. Patrick L. Lumumba, a revolutionary Pan-Africanist, torchbearer of African culture's liberation, for his brilliant and inspiring sermon to all Liberians to put Liberia first during the national elections in October 2017. You are truly our friend who knows the words to the tune in our hearts. And thanks for telling us the words in truth and love. Thanks for challenging us to move ahead towards peaceful elections. In grateful appreciation, we honor you this 27th day of May, 2017 in the city of Monrovia, Monrovia County, Republic of Liberia, signed Mrs. Yah Bryant, Administrator, Liberia Crusaders for Peace, approved Ambassador Julie N.D., Traditional Queen, Republic of Liberia. I will now give the microphone over to one of the traditional leaders to give you the name. But let me tell you the name that they're going to give you. Because of the wisdom that you have, the value that you bring to the table, they are going to give you one of the names of our chief that live forever. He was not formally educated with traditional education. He was member of the Six-Man Council of Liberia. He sat at the executive mansion of Liberia, but he did not know how to write his name because he had wisdom. Because of his wisdom, he lived a decent, a life of integrity. Your name tonight will be called Chief Tamba Taylor. Okay. I want one more hand clap, man. Tamatela, it was men that brave the youth that can come from other countries and can't disable other people that think can be straight. So that why we name him Tamatela. And you are not know A to be the I will stand here, let me be both to your Jeff and I know both. But equally so, your bow can be under your arm where you can step and then can step there. Either needed Allah and the blessing and giraffe on day. I was not know about that meeting. I was going to come today, but I didn't know that. Loosened it before I got to know. And I told my chiefs, we just come urgent so. So we invited you. Next time you hear our queen say, there's our queen. There's our queen, the traditional queen. They're not queen for America. Queen for the country people we born her. That one when she said, hey, we can't tell because the people say your leader can come from in your neighborhood also. So your leader be 2 years and when God anytime appear there to a rescue. That's what we here for. So that our queen here. Apart from that, the people where you see here, so and you see somebody who resemble our queen. Okay. We gave you this so you can go play when you reach so the madam can hear it and the children can hear it and other people can hear it. Then they will ask you who they person. But in that stream say on that to you know about it missing that stream. Because so we present it to you to comfort you. When you go by the fund there, that pray the message so to comfort you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Julie Nabamaya, Julie Andy Nabamaya, Pagri Nabamaya, we are going Nabamaya, Tata Tango Nabamaya, Pamaya Zama.
What more could we have expected from Crusaders for Peace? What a wonderful traditional ceremony. We just want to extend our gratitude to the ambassador, the cultural ambassador of the Republic of Liberia. Please, we need quietude. The program is ongoing. We need quietude, please. Let's avoid lottery because we are reaching to one of the most important aspects of this program. Thanks very much, Ambassador, for this historic traditional ceremony that will go down in the annals of our country's chronicle. It is good to always have you around preaching these kinds of messages, especially at such a critical political transition period in the history of our country. We've come to the very important part of this program. For those of you who weren't present for the first ceremony, you robbed yourself of the opportunity. You robbed yourself of the opportunity, but thank God that you are now here to receive the blessing of wisdom from the voice of Pan-Africanism. It is always a proud, a privilege, an elation to have a great hero of Africa. When you see Professor Lumumba, you see Kwame Nkrumah, you see Sekou Touré, you see Amilcar Cabral, you see Agostinho Neto, and other great revolutionaries who contributed to the black struggle and the liberation of the common people. This is why it is important that we have him here. He really doesn't need introduction. All of us, or almost all of us, if not all of us, are ardent followers, mentees of this particular professor. But as a matter of protocol, for the second time, we allow Professor Lumumba to infuse the immersion of consciousness in this hall. He's about to speak to our consciences. Tighten your belt. The plane is about to pick up. I'm certain that this parlor will land us safely. Permit me now to call on to this rosary, one of Liberia's finest sons, to do the introduction of our guest orator. Brother Moses Yamia, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Brother Mountain. A professor really doesn't need any more, let's say, big introduction, because his existence or his presence here is almost like an introduction. When my mother lamented that she doesn't know book, so I thought that we live in a country where you must learn English before you go to school to acquire formal education. But when I was opportune to have met Professor in Kenya, his Kenyan School of Law office, I remember that there are Kenyans learning biology, chemistry in Swahili, in Luo, in Kikuyu. Can it be here too, so that our people in the rural areas can learn biology, economics, and the history of our country in Basel, in Pele, in Gio, in Mano? If the people can transcribe the Bible in Basel, if they can have the VAR script, what's about it being written, biology being written in VAR? And so it's a tragedy that you have to learn English before you come to school. But we'll get there, we'll get there. Professor Pilelo Lumumba, I just want to share this joke with him to take the kind of where we go to school at the University of Liberia. In 2011, I was a freshman, reading and memorizing to go and write an exam. So it was Geography 102. At the time, the older women and the older folks at the University of Liberia, they were in large number. And those people, they were just there to get the papers, to get, recognized in society, because that is all of the day. And they never, because they wanted to, when they go home from school, they take care of their children, they take care of their house mom, they take care of the home. So no time to study. When they come back and they face challenges with the lesson, there are some of the comrades who, when the old man asks them for answer, they will get an elbow. So this geography 1 or 2 exam, they call it the Old Trafford on Fenner campus. Place, exam is real tough. People sweat. So I have old man behind me. The old man stood up, went to my people and checked my people. My son brilliantly and he carpet too. The old man took the paper, carpet, and at the time the teacher discovered it and almost disqualified me. And he led to me getting C for that semester. When we came outside the exam, the old man trying to beg me. I said, "Oh man, no problem. I can't advance, but I can't pull up my anger because she's like a grandmother to me." Yes. So I had to accept the C. But all of a sudden, after that semester, going through the restroom, coming on Broad Street, passing by Abbey Bank, I saw the woman coming on the bank. The man said, my son. I want 10 around because she not order me see. So she keep near me. She said, my son, I know, sorry. So she took her a $100 note and flashed in my hand. I said, Omar. She said, my son, sorry, they will not have any. I said, Omar, anytime I speak, take it, check the paper. If you not register that course that semester, anytime you speak, take it, any classroom, check the paper. So that's just it. That's life at the University of Liberia. So Professor Peter Lumumba, Patrick Lok Otieno Tamatelo Lumumba. Patrick Lok Otieno Chief Tamatelo Lumumba. Is the Dean of the Kenyan School of Law, a staunch Pan-Africanist, an astute orator, an anti-corruption crusader on the continent of Africa and the rest of the world. In 2010, he served as the chairman on the defunct Kenyan Anti-Corruption Commission. And in one of his speeches, he said that when I was chairman of the KACC, the Kenyans thought I would have pretended to be fighting corruption. But I went actually to fight corruption. So the parliament got rid of me because I was like a blockade to the wholesale pillaging of the Kenyan resources. So he's here with us. We have not much to say. He has written extensively. And by the way, I'll be getting some other books. And then we'll read. He will leave them here for us to read as Liberians. So that his message can resonate, can continue to resonate in our society. Professor PLO, Chief Tamalumumba, I'm very, very humble to welcome you. And before you come, we want to do it in a way that it will be interactive. After Professor Pierre Lumumba has spoken, he will take about 4 questions from the audience, and also the moderating panel will be involved from the audience so that it can be interactive. So, Professor Pierre Lumumba, may we all rise. Welcome, Professor Pierre Lumumba, to the podium.
Good evening. Let me start by appreciating my hosts this evening, the young ambassadors for peace, led by my very good friend, President Momo Taylor Jr. Permit me also to appreciate the Federation of Liberian Youth, headed by President Augustine Taba. Permit me also to appreciate my good friend Andy, who has amazed me this evening through the Crusaders for Peace. I had the advantage this morning of listening to great Liberians. Stephen Koluba, who gave a moving testimony of the life that he lived in his early days. And at age 33, he has demonstrated that those who seek never fail to find. I also want to use the occasion to remember in absentia the Reverend Luther, who spoke this morning, and to appreciate in no mean measure a man who his historical appreciation of Liberia and Africa is as titillating as it is amazing, the Reverend Emmanuel. Permit me also, in absentia, to appreciate Dr. Fanbule, a man who, when he spoke to my heart. He spoke to my heart because the message that he carried this morning is not a message only for Liberians, but a message for all Africans. And you know, there was a debate in the 1960s as to who is an African. And it was argued in those early days by the school of Senegalese called Samba Sanyang, that in order to be an African, you must have a black skin. But there was another school, the school of the Osage for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and Leopold Sedar Senghor of Senegal. And they took the view with which I associate myself, that black skin in and of itself does not constitute one an African. That what constitutes one an African is his or her desire to live like an African and to love the continent of Africa. I can therefore confirm to you that I know many black-skinned men and women who are not Africans. And that I know many white and brown-skinned individuals who are as African as they come. And therefore, when this evening I am constituted into Chief Tamba Taylor of Liberia, I'm a very happy man. My only wish is that being constituted into a chief will also entitle me to land in Liberia. And that I shall have my own land, and I shall build my own house here in Liberia. I also take this opportunity to thank all of us who are gathered here this evening to remind ourselves that the reason why we are gathered here is because young Liberians who desire to see their country realize her potential decided to invite a fellow African to talk about the need for peace as a prerequisite to the realization of political, economic, and social development. And therefore, when I have the opportunity to speak to you this evening, I must remind myself that I am in a country of history, the country of Liberia, the land of liberty. I must remind myself that this country did not exist since the year 1847. This country existed since the creation of man. And what happened in 1847 is that a government was instituted here in Liberia, and that government is the government that we are talking about, and how it has succeeded or failed in the struggle to create an environment where Liberians can realize their potential. I remember as a young boy in Kenya, in my classes of history and civics, when I heard the name of President Tubman of Liberia, I remember so very vividly that at that time, only 2 African countries had not been colonized, Liberia and Ethiopia. And I remember so very well in those early days, as we said in the morning, Liberia became the political mecca of many a leader who are leading the struggle for independence. I remember that in those early days, if you wanted to lead Africa, you had to come to Liberia. If you ask the Nigerians, their own Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe was here. If you ask the Ghanaians, their own Diosajefo Kwame Nkrumah was here. If you ask the Guineans, their own Ahmed Sékou Touré was here. If you ask the people of Guinea-Bissau, their own Amilcar Cabral Abel-Jassi was here. There is a sense in which Liberia was the fountain from which all leaders drank, and the mother's milk of African independence and revolution was consumed by those leaders in this very historic city of Monrovia. It therefore gladdens my heart that several years down the line, I have both the privilege and honor of being present in Monrovia, of being present in Liberia, to share with you my thoughts on what I think can catapult Liberia into the orbit of civilization alongside other nations and other civilizations. I have no doubt in my mind that this country can be a great country, that indeed this country is a great country which we only need to make greater. You know, as I said in the morning, when Liberia was being conceived in the manner that we know it today, in the United States of America, those who thought about her had already had their own experience. You will remember that the United States of America was colonized. And you will remember that that day in Philadelphia, in the year 1776, when the 13 original states met in Philadelphia, and they came out with the American Declaration of Independence. And you remember those eternal words that defy both geography and history and time, when the Declaration of Independence said, "We hold all truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that governments are instituted amongst men, that they may secure these rights by the consent of the people, and that if any government were to go against these rights, then it becomes the people, the right of the people to abolish that government." At that time, even when they said all men were created equal, it is not true that they were equal. The women in the United States of America did not have the right to vote until the year 1908. The persons of color did not have the right to vote until in states such as Alabama in 1963. And we can hear the voice of Martin Luther King speaking in 1963 that even in Alabama, where the lips of its governor reeks with the words of nullification and interposition, that even there, one day the sons of the former slaves and the sons of the former slave owners will sit together in the table of brotherhood. So we have come from a long tradition, and that tradition recognizes that young men and women must participate in the creation of their own nation. So today, when we are assembled here as Africa, in order to look to the future, we must remind ourselves of where we came from as a people. And I said this morning, and I repeat it again, that in 1884, Africa was innocent. Africa was innocent in the south. The Zulus roamed free in southern Africa, as did the Xhosa, they roamed free. In Namibia, the Herero roamed free, as did the Ovambo. In East Africa, the Kikuyu and the Luo of Kenya were free. In the Central African Republic and in Congo, the Bangala and the Kasai were free, and the Luba. In this part of the world, the Malinke knew no borders. The Yoruba knew no borders. The Igbo knew no borders. The Hausa and Fulani knew no borders. Then some gentlemen, there were no ladies in that assembly, sat in Berlin, in Germany, and without any due regard to our cultural realities, they divided Africa amongst themselves. The Germans took over what we now call Dahomey. They took over Rwanda and Urundi in East Africa and Tanganyika. And they took over Southwest African Republic, which we now call Namibia. They only lost them after the World War I. The British had their share. They took Gold Coast, which we now call Ghana. They took Nigeria, which was named by the girlfriend of Lord Lugard. They took Zambia. They took Malawi, which they called Nyasaland. They had the audacity to call one country now called Zambia Northern Rhodesia, and the other one that we now call Zimbabwe, they called Rhodesia. And it did not stop there. The Portuguese, a little country, which is the sick man of Europe in many ways, took Angola. They took Mozambique, and they were not satisfied. They came here in the western part of West Africa and took Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. And they did not stop there. Even the little country Brussels, through the cunning and ingenuity of King Leopold, took the Democratic Republic of Congo, 80 times larger than Belgium, and converted into a colony. And they did not stop there. The French had their share. The French came here, they took Benin, they took Togo, they took Gabon, they took Mauritania, they took Mali, and they did not stop there. They went to Niger, they went to Upper Volta, which we now call Burkina Faso, and they did not stop there. They went to Chad, they went to Central African Republic, they went to Algeria, they went to Tunisia, they went to Morocco. They took it all. So, and nobody was left out in this struggle. The Spaniards also had their little sliver of land. They took Equatorial Guinea. By the time that they were through with us, we of the Negroid blood had been so thoroughly disrupted, so thoroughly debased, that Frantz Fanon says that the African had been thingified. He had become a thing without rights as men. So to claim even at that time that all men were born equal, it was not true. In fact, a few years later in South Africa, a Dutch immigrant called Hendrik Vervoort, instituting the apartheid regime, said that Africans were only fit for one thing, as drawers of water and hewers of wood for the white folks. That is the state of the African that we are talking about. So we went through the period of colonization. You and me did not have the right to vote. You and me did not have the right to participate. And then a group of young Africans started emerging. And after the World War II, the international community sitting in the United States of America decided that we had to decolonize. A Europe that was founded after the World War II, sometimes I think it was not a world war, it was a tribal war of European tribes. But they called it a world war anyway. And what then happened is that young men and women from Africa started to agitate for independence. And it started very early, sometimes we forget. In 1912, the oldest political party in black Africa was formed in South Africa by Sir Albert Luthuli, the African National Congress. And no sooner had it been founded that we had yet another party in South Africa, the Pan-African Congress of Robert Sobukwe. Africans were beginning to rise because they believed that they had to participate, and they were young Africans. And it did not stop there. It was not only Mandela who later in the 1960s were leading the struggle. There was Walter Sisulu without the advantage of education. There was Govan Mbeki and many others like Oliver Reginald Tambo. And we remember all of them. In the Portuguese land, we had young men and women also rising. How many of you here will forget Eduardo Mondlane of Mozambique? How many of you will forget Samora Moises Machel of Mozambique? When we went to Namibia, we had other people, younger people. They did not have to go to school. How many will forget Sambi Yoma and Andimba Hamantoivo ya Toivo? And how many of us will forget that even in Angola, we had young people, and I say they were young because they were in their 30s and 20s. How many of you will forget that at that time, we had younger people in Angola? How many of you will forget Agostino Neto, Jonas Malheiro Savimbi, and Holden Roberto, among others? And it did not stop there. It did not stop there because in Zambia, we had Kenneth David Kaunda. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the man for whom I am named, Patrice Emery Lumumba, who was leading the struggle. In Tanzania, Julius Kambarage Nyerere. In Uganda, Apollo Milton Obote, and in Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta. And of course, when you came to the West, you had in Nigeria great people, the great Nnamdi Azikiwe, the Tafawa Balewa, and the Sardana of Sokoto, Sir Ahmadu Bello. In Ghana, you remember Kwame Nkrumah, the Osajefo, and you will remember Leopold Sedar Senghor of Senegal, Modibo Keita of Mali, and Ahmed Ben Bella of Algeria, and many others who are rising at that time. The reason why we have to remind ourselves of this history is because history teaches us that if you do not have a sense of history, you cannot have a sense of the future. So we must never forget that there were great Africans who were fighting at that time. And they were fighting that we may regain our dignity. And the reason why that is important, this country, this Monrovia, became the political homage for those leaders. I've already said it and I repeat it again. The Osajie for Kwame Nkrumah was here I have said it and I repeat it again. Nnamdi Azikiwe was here. I say it and I repeat it. Haile Selassie was here. I say it and I repeat it. Ahmed Seko Toure was here. Modibo Keita was here. Shaka Stephens was here. They were all here. David Dako was here. They were here. Patrice Emery Lumumba was here. Because this is where you drank the fountain of freedom. This was the place. So today, we must remind ourselves why it is that we attained our political independence. I remember in the month of March in 1957, in Accra, Ghana, Ghana's Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah, in the struggle for independence, told the Ghanaians and the fellow Africans at that time, seek ye first the political kingdom and the rest shall be given unto you. His clarion call was that we should gain our independence as the foundation stone upon which we can gain economic liberation and social cohesion. And after 1957, when he said, Ghana is free, it shall never be colonized again, he went to Casablanca in Morocco and repeated the same thing. But it was only in 1963, on the 25th day of March to be exact, in Addis Ababa, in the presence of 32 leaders of the then independent African leaders. Your leader, Tubman, was there. And he gave a speech. He's one of the 32 who gave a speech. And all of them were unanimous that Africa must unite. But the most animated was Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah. The Osagie for said, we must not leave this hall in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, without one African government. We must not leave here without one African army. We must not leave here without a single African passport. We must not leave here without a single African currency. I'm prepared to stand down as the president of Ghana. Let us create a country before we each get used to the trappings of power and independence, because the colonial master is not asleep. He will divide us and will never unite. Unfortunately, nobody listened to the Asajefo. And as a result, instead of an African Union, we ended up with an organization of African unity, which many historians described appropriately that it was merely an annual jamboree of dictators, a toothless bulldog, which did very little. And you and me know that no sooner had we attained political independence than the colonial master started agitating and plotting against the leaders of the day. Many of you, and I encourage you to read Luda de Vet's The Assassination of Patrice Emery Lumumba. On that day, when without warning or without inclusion in the day's program, he emerged from the crowd and gave a speech which will never be forgotten. He said, among other things, that the beauty of what is happening today is that from this day henceforth, the history of Congo will be written by the Congolese. And Congo will be governed by the Congolese. 9 months later, they killed him. A few years later, in Togo, they killed Sylvanus Olympio. A few years later, in Mali, they removed Modibo Keita. A few years later, they removed Nnamdi Azikiwe and killed Tafawa Balewa and the Sowedoner of Sokoto. A few years later, they killed Ahmed Ben Bella. A few years later, they overthrew the Osagiev. A few years later, they tried to kill Sekou Touré. A few years later, they killed Amilcar Cabral. They were in the killing spree. And they were mounting coup d'etats. And yet when they sat, they were saying that coups are as frequent as breakfast in Africa. But at that time, even breakfast was not frequent. Because Africa was not producing. So that today when we sit here as young Liberians, and we are thinking about an election, and we are thinking about peace, we should ask ourselves, what is our role in that peace? How is it that your country with so much promise, founded in 1847, continues to punch below her economic way? How is it that your country, founded in 1847, continues to punch below her political way? How is it that your country, founded in 1847, does not know social cohesion? And Liberia is Africa in microcosm. Because indeed in Congo is the same thing. Because indeed in Central African Republic it is the same thing. Because in Sudan it is the same thing. Every election period in Africa threatens the nation because many Africans do not understand why they seek political office. In many African countries, individuals seek political office because it gives them an opportunity to steal from the people. It gives them an opportunity to acquire wealth that they do not deserve. It gives them an opportunity, in the words of Fan Boulay, to engage in theft of industrial proportions. It gives them an opportunity to engage in kleptomaniac behavior. It gives them an opportunity to abuse the people whom they serve. It gives them an opportunity to rape their countries. And you Liberians have witnessed that. You Liberians have witnessed it firsthand. You Liberians have entertained leaders whose only claim to fame is that they were murderers. You Liberians have entertained leaders and endured individuals who had no business leading Liberia. You Liberians have gone through a civil war. You Liberians have known pain firsthand. You Liberians have known destruction firsthand. And you Liberians are not out of the woods. The UN is still here, alive and well, as the guarantors of peace. You have had the advantage in the recent past of electing an individual in the name of Johnson Sirleaf, who to our credit has presided over a government that is reasonably stable. She may not in that government have achieved all that you desire. It may be very true that that government still suffers the African disease of cronyism and nepotism and corruption. It may very well be But that notwithstanding, we must also acknowledge that that government has preserved peace. We must also acknowledge that that government has provided opportunities. We must, in the nature of things, in the words of John Garang, when man is given an opportunity to serve, man can never govern guiltlessly. But at the end of the day, history counts whether the credits are more than the negatives. And I want to submit to you that when history is written, it will be said of this administration that it is going to preside over an election and has the possibility for the first time of presiding over a peaceful transfer of power. In other words, with all the shortcomings, history will remember this government with a little charity and with fondness. So today, we are gathered here to remind ourselves that we have a duty as young Liberians. We have a duty to remember that throughout the ages, men have protected their countries. And in my argument, men includes women. They have protected their countries because they know that motherland must be protected, not for this generation only, but for generations yet to be born. If you permit me a little latitude and permit me to look at history and to look at the world, throughout history, it is young men and women who have risen to the occasion. In 1908, in the then Ottoman Empire, when the empire was under threat, it is the so-called young Turks who came out and protected the Ottoman Empire. Of course, history will accuse them of having committed the massacre of the Armenians, which is being debated today. But out of the effort of the young Turks, you and me know that the modern nation of Turkey was created by Atatürk. It was young men. Young men have always contributed positively to history. You and me will remember in 1963 when Americans of color were being discriminated against. It was a young Martin Luther King Jr. It was a young Reverend Jimmy Young. It was a young Jesse Jackson. It was a young Malcolm X who are in the forefront of the struggle against discrimination in Alabama and Mississippi. And we remember Rosa Parks. In other words, young men and women are the ones who make changes in the world, and it did not stop there. In 1958, when France was in trouble and they called Charles de Gaulle back to power, it was young people who came. And in 1968, during the student riots, it was young French men and women who were in the forefront of preserving France for that generation and generations yet to be born. And if you think that that kind of history is too deep into history, in the 1980s in South Korea, it is young men and women who are in the streets. And in China, in Tiananmen Square, it is the young men and women who enforced changes during the reign of Deng Xiaoping. And it did not stop there. It went on. Much more recently in Africa, we have seen the Arab Spring. We have seen Tunisian government which was corrupt tumble. We have seen the thieving government of Hosni Mubarak tumble, because young men were rising and playing their part. You young Liberians, how do you want history to remember you? Because history has a way of remembering people in two different ways. And there are two different ways of getting into history. In Greek mythology, we are told that there was a young man who, having done nothing throughout his life, the young man was called Herostratus. On the day that he wanted to be remembered in history, he burnt a cathedral that he may be remembered. Do you want to burn modern day cathedral that you may be remembered? No, you must not. Because there is another way of getting into history. The way of Alexander the Great, who died at age 33. And he said of Alexander the Great that on the day of his death, he said that a coffin should be made with his hands outstretched, and that his coffin should be carried by doctors to demonstrate to the world that no matter who you are, when death comes, even the intervention of the doctors, you die in spite of the intervention. And his outstretched and empty hands to show the thieving leaders of Africa that you leave with nothing. So there is a sense in which you Liberians must choose now how you want to be remembered. I have no doubt in my mind that this country, like most African countries, deserve better. But this thing that we call peace, what is peace? What is it? Because we are fond of equating the absence of war with peace. That is not peace. If you allow me a little spirituality, Jesus of Nazareth says, peace I give you. The peace that surpasses all understanding. For those of you who are Muslims, Ramadan Kareem, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, says that when you wake up and greet somebody, say Assalamu alaikum, let peace be upon you. Among the Hindu, Lord Krishna says that the only time when you are to go into war, when you have exhausted the avenue of peace, but even then, after war, you must sue for peace. The great Mahatma Gandhi says, there is no way to peace, peace is the way. So the question is, what is peace? We want the peace of the graveyard, where there is total silence. That is not the peace I'm talking about. I'm talking about the peace that rests on the pedestal of justice. The peace that ensures that you young Liberians live in a country where you have opportunity to serve your country, where you are judged not by your ethnic extraction, but by your ability. I look for that kind of peace. I look for the kind of peace that is predicated upon justice, that when you work, you earn by the sweat of your brow. I look to the peace that ensures that in all the 15 counties of Liberia, there are opportunities for young men and women, that young Liberians do not have to swim across the Mediterranean Sea into Malta to go into modern slavery in Europe. I look forward to the peace that does not give young Liberians an opportunity to be humiliated at the embassy of the United States of America as you look for the green card. I look forward to the peace that does not allow you to go to the embassy of Australia or the United Kingdom or any one of these European countries in order to be humiliated that you may go and flip hamburger. I am suggesting to us that that peace can only be achieved when we have men and women in the political class who know that politics and service are one. That those who know that when you seek political office, you seek political office for the sake of service. You know, it is the great Indian nationalist, Chakravarti Rajagopalachari, who said, when politics stumbles, the country pays. So we must have hygiene in our politics. We must sanitize our politics. The men and women in Liberia, and there is no shortage of men and women in Liberia, who are now seeking to be the presidents of Liberia. As I drove through the streets of Liberia and Monrovia, I was shown the cars that they want to unleash to the unsuspecting electorate. They will be visiting every village and every hamlet, making all promises known and unknown to man, saying that they will make manna fall from heaven. They will claim that they will build bridges where there are no rivers. They'll claim that they will make bread without dough. They'll claim that they'll make ice without water. They'll make many claims and mask them. And ask them, we don't want to be given cock and bull stories. We simply want our hospitals to work. We want our land to be tilled. We want our children to go to school. We want to buy food that is grown in Liberia. We don't want to eat chicken from Brazil. We do not want to drink water from Europe. It can't be done. Ask them how they are going to achieve that. But I also want you to ask them another question. Are you loyal to Liberia? Ask them this question. Do you hold the citizenship of another country? And if they hold the citizenship of another country, then they are not fit to be the president of Liberia. I am saying that in all seriousness, because is it not Christ of Nazareth who says, where your treasure is, that is where your heart is? So if your treasure is in the United States, that is where your heart is. If your treasure is in Australia, that is where your heart is. If your treasure is in the United Kingdom, that is where your heart is. So let your treasure be in Monrovia. Let your treasure be here so that your heart can be here. Let us know that your family is here. Let it not be that this is a hunting ground where you come to catch the antelope and take the meat to the United States or other capitals. Liberia is not a hunting ground. But yet I must tell you that throughout the ages, and I said this in the morning, when you are speaking to those in power, when they wield power, you must do so with wisdom. You must not speak with the arrogance that inflames the anger, but you must speak with the firmness that opens their eyes. And I said in the morning, and I liberally quoted the Bible, and I will do so again, that throughout the ages there have always been two ways of addressing kings. That there is the way of John the Baptist, where John the Baptist goes out and tells Herod, "Oh Herod, you adulterer, you've taken Herodias, your brother's wife. When you do that, Herod will arrest you. Herod will imprison you. Then a young girl who is the daughter of Herod called Salome will dance. When Salome has danced, she will be told, whatever you ask for, I will give you." Then Salome's mother will say, "I want the head of John the Baptist, and you will be killed." The question is, do you want to be John the Baptist? Are you suicidal? Or you want to live a little longer, that you may see and enjoy the dividends? There are occasions when it is good to be John the Baptist, but there is another way of dealing with the king. It is the Nathan way. Because history tells us in the book of Samuel in chapter 12 that there was a prophet called Nathan, and that he went to David and said, "Oh David, there is injustice in your land. There is a person who is a very rich man with many animals, and there is another poor person with only a lamb. And this man with many animals takes his only lamb and slaughters it." And David gets very agitated and angry and said, "Who is that he may be punished fourfold?" And he tells him, "Oh David, that man is you. That man is you because you have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite, and you have killed Uriah by the sword of the Ammonites and taken his wife Bathsheba. The sword shall never leave your house." But yet there is a sense in which, in the case of Nathan, it is David who accused and punished himself. So we must be discerning and do that which is good and right. You young people, you must remember the Chinese have a saying, when you don't have an answer, ask the youth. They know everything. It is not meant to be a compliment. It is meant to suggest that sometimes in the exuberance of our youth, we think that we have the monopoly of knowledge. But is it not true that those who arrogate to themselves the monopoly of knowledge often lead their countries through a shortcut to chaos? I'm submitting to us that we must be discerning. Use your youth and your exuberance to go out into rural Liberia. You, Mr. President of the Federation of Liberia Youth, go out there. Speak to your constituency. Tell them that it's big business. There are men and women who are coming here to sell things to us. There are men and women who have stolen in Monrovia, and they are coming here to give us as gifts what they have taken out of our taxes. Interrogate them. Ask them what their salaries were, and by what magic they have become millionaires, that we may also become millionaires. When you have gone into that area, tell the people to interrogate them. And you, the president of Young Ambassadors for Peace, also go to another part of Liberia and tell the Liberians, both men and women, that the time has come to make a decision. Because as I said, there is always a decision time. In the Bible, which I must quote liberally because it is the holy month of Ramadan, there is a time when the Israelites want to go to the promised land like you want to go to the promised land. And the prophet Joshua says, choose you now whom you shall serve, the Lord God or the Lord of the Amorites. As for me and my house, I shall serve the Lord. But he did not start there. The prophet Elijah had had this confrontation with the prophets of Baal, the 450 of them. And he told them, let us today make a decision. If God is God, let us worship God. And if Baal is Baal, let us worship Baal. That is what we are confronted with. Because they are latter-day Baals who want to be worshipped, who have money and they think that they are God's gift to us, yet they are cursed to us. We must unmask and remove the masks so that we only give the opportunity to men and women who can serve. You young men and women, you crusaders for peace, go out there, sing to their hearts. Is it not true that throughout the ages, when we have been in trouble, we have always sung? Is it not true that it's in music that we sing? Is it not true that it's the music that evokes in us an emission? Is it not true that several years ago they said, and they sang by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, there we wept as we remembered Zion. We too must sit down and remember Monrovia. We too must sit down and remember Liberia. We too must sit down and remember that our iron ore is going without being processed. We too must sit down and must remember that our timber is being taken away. We too must sit down and remember that our rubber is being taken away. We too must remember that the Chinese are coming here and they are taking over. We too must remember that we have a stake in this country. We too must remember that we must not deal with people on the basis of exploitation, but on the basis of cooperation and on the basis of trade. I said in the morning, and I'm repeating it again, that in the table of civilization, there are only two ways of sitting at the dinner table of civilization. You are either a diner or a waiter. For too long, we of the Negroid blood, we have been at the dinner table as waiters, not as diners. And I'm submitting to us that even we Liberians have been at the dinner table as people to be exploited. Time has come that we must have dividends. The dividends of our labor, the dividends of our tax. And let me tell you, it is not going to come on a silver platter. Throughout the ages, people have always fought for it. Throughout the ages, people have always struggled for it. Throughout the ages, there is no gain without pain. Throughout the ages, there is no result without effort. Throughout the ages, there are no miracles. If you seek that which is under the bed, you must bend. You can't say abracadabra and it jumps up. It will never happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, today is a great day. It is a great day because you Liberians are making a solemn vow that there shall never be civil war in Liberia. You are making a solemn vow that the electoral period in Liberia will always be an occasion for a competition of ideas, and that a good idea shall prevail over a bad idea. You are making a solemn vow that whether you are Muslim or Christian or Jew or Gentile or Kisi or whichever ethnic group, it does not matter. Because I remember so very vividly in 1947, Mahatma Gandhi, when asked about the divisions in India, he said, as a young man in Gujarati, I went to the temple one day, and the preacher in my temple read from the Hindu Gita through to the Muslim Quran, through to the Jewish Torah, and through to the Christian Bible, as if it did not matter which book was being read as long as God was being worshipped. And I'm submitting to us that our diversity is our strength. I submit to us that God is a God of diversity. He has put us together, Muslim, Christian, and alike, that we may serve this great country. Let us make it great. Let us make the elections that are coming forth great elections, at which great men and women will be given the opportunity to serve. I am not a Jewish prophet. I'm not related to any Jewish prophet. But I have the ability to see on the basis of extant evidence. Although I do not speak with the authority of the prophets, nor with their exactitude. But I can see that sometimes in the month of October, you will have a good election. I can see that in the month of October, you will elect men and women who will serve this country. But let me tell you, it is said just to say that no man can rule guiltlessly. Even when you have elected them, democracy is preserved by eternal vigilance. You must always be vigilant, because it is true that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know, the Chinese have a saying that why is it that when a king retires, he does not put his so important crown on the head of his minister, he puts it on a nail. And the answer is, with the nail, there is no danger of the nail taking itself seriously. But when you put it on the head of a minister, he may very well take himself seriously and think he is the king. So power has an allure, power has an attraction, power opens doors, and it is only the very humble who have the ability to exercise power as if it was something entrusted to them. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the wisdom of speaking on and on while we know that the truth sits on our laps? Let us pause for a moment and ask ourselves going forward, what kind of Liberia do we want? And I'm suggesting to us, we want a great Liberia. We want a Liberia where there is food. We want a Liberia where there is good education. We want a Liberia where there is sound health. We want a Liberia where there is employment. We want a Liberia where young men and women and old men and women have the opportunity to serve their country. We want a Liberia which will be respected in Africa, a Liberia which will be respected in the world. And I'm suggesting to us that that Liberia is achievable if you young men and women want it. You are the midwife. Choose you now, whether you want to strangle the child or you want to nurture the child. Go out, therefore, into the 15 counties and do that which is good and right. Protect Liberia, preserve the Liberia, and give Liberia the leaders that she deserves. God bless.
Thank you very much. What kind of Liberia do you want? What kind of Liberia do you want? Whenever we have an opportunity to listen to the professor, it is always an opportunity to learn new ideas and new things. Again, on behalf of the Federation of Liberian Youth and the Young Ambassadors for Peace, Professor Prof. Lumumba, we want to extend our earnest gratitude to you for charging this hall intellectually and consciously. We can now go to the polls in October of this year with the confidence and optimism that a new Liberia of hope, equality, and social justice is possible in our generation. So we want to salute you. May God bless you. May God endow you with wisdom as you travel across the African continent to take a new message for the total liberation of the African people. So at this time, I will ask the audience to rise again as we give Professor Prof. Lumumba a big hand of applause. Thank you, thank you. You can have your seats. Because of time, we will take 3 questions at most. 3 questions at most. We want to begin with the co-moderator. He's Moses Yamia. He will ask the professor the first question.
Yeah, thank you. Professor, already I was kind of yes. In 2003, the Civil War came to an end with the coming of the Comprehensive Peace Accord, Accra Peace Accord, and Article 13 of the CPA called for the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And one of the mandates of the TRC was to investigate the root causes of the Liberian crisis, gave the opportunity to victims to be heard, and also perpetrators to be heard, and then come up with recommendations. And then at the end of the process in 2008, the TRC came up with a recommendation to prosecute certain people in the spirit of peace and reconciliation. Up to now, those recommendations are not being implemented. We have the victims, they are languishing, and then also we have the perpetrators in and out of the country. Some of them are even in power, benefiting from the resources of the state. So, Professor, I want to ask you, do you support retributive justice or restorative justice?
Thank you. We go to the next question. We'll take one from here, one from here. We want to recognize the journalists. Journalist Pelina.
Well, my name is Francis Pellinan. I'm from the Catholic Media Center. Let me take you around Africa. As you indicated in your presentation, that the Chinese are coming to Africa and taking everything. Now, China has this one-China policy that many African countries and their leaders ascribe to. I want to get from you, what is your view on this one-China policy, and to what extent is it impacting development on the continent of Africa?
Thank you very much. We go to the next person.
Thank you so much for the mighty Onkoli. By way of introduction, I'm student Carlos Timba Edison, a student of the University of Liberia and the chairman of the Militant Bureau, and also all of the comrades who subscribe to Pan-Africanist and the mass-structured philosophy of our party. I have listened to you so well on many occasions about
how Africa can be revolutionized in the best interests of progress and maintaining dignity. I have also listened to your many speeches with the construct of reawakening the individual conscience of every African to fighting corruption, which has been observed as a nightmare which has always eaten the fabrics of progress and growth in Africa. My question is, with us being mortal human beings, we will bow down to the powerful hand of them one day. What mechanism are you putting in place that will support continuity of this useful campaign and effort of continuing to reawaken the consciences of Africans so as to stand against the vices of corruption and defend the integrity of Africa?
Thank you very much.
Let's take a few
Okay. Because the professor is sensitive in terms of gender equity, we'll take a female. One female, any female. We got too many females in the hall. We'll take one. The professor said we should take one female.
Hello? Young lady, because I want to say I can speak. I want to have a gold laugh at me behind there. So let me clean it. Standing before you, my name is Musuke Johnson, the National Governor Council President for the 15th county and the 16th tribe. Let me take the time to tell you thank you. Those who go to that do that, what they're supposed to do for it. Because some of us are not here in the daytime, but the short period time. Why you pay off? It add on our wisdom, it add on our knowledge, and we exercise it. Because what you throw here, a jail is same color. But they bring the question what they asking. They get a appointment letter like you working here now, so to answer that kind of question. The person what you get up, the knowledge what you share with us without giving you nothing. We're supposed to take it with precaution and we go with send our people to work with it. But now any plenty question I can't get it made. So professional, I will shake your hand. Thank you. And we always like to be here with us. Thank you.
Let me answer the first question. I'm very familiar with the peace process here in Liberia. And I'm aware that you chose a method that had been used in South Africa. And the whole idea of truth and reconciliation is something that was based on the understanding that there can be no peace and forgiveness without truth. And I hold the view that that is the proper thing. In fact, there is a book I would commend to all of you, written by the chairman of the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Archbishop Desmond Pilo Tutu. And in that book he says there is no future without forgiveness. He says that in order to preserve a country, there must be forgiveness, but it must be on the basis of the fact that the perpetrators of injustice have come forth and said that they committed atrocities and they asked for apology. That I think is critical. But even before that, I remember, I do not know how many of you have watched the film or the documentary about Nigeria after the Civil War. I always remember these words of General Yakubu Gowon. When he received the surrender of Biafra, this is what he said: "My brothers, welcome." And then the commentator says of Gowon that he said that we are brothers, you have come back, I'm very happy. At this moment, the victors must not gloat and the vanquished must not be humiliated. Because it is important, he said, that for the sake of the nation, we must have selective memories. But we will not forget. lest we repeat it again. Recently, on Thursday, I was in Rwanda. And Rwanda, in 1994, went through genocide of the Tutsis, where 1 million Tutsis were massacred, even in places of worship. 20 years later, Rwanda is on a path of recovery, and the people are living together. And the reason why they are living together is because the justice was not retributive. Because when you have retributive justice, you are building another group of individuals who have resentment and anger and hate in their heart, and it's only a matter of time that they'll seek revenge. One can see that in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Democratic Republic of Congo has never been at peace because the spirit of Lumumba will not allow it to be at peace. The spirit of the people who are massacred will never allow it to be at peace. So I hold the view that even in matters such as those, Desmond Tutu is right. There is no future without forgiveness, but the perpetrators must come forth and say, I committed atrocities, forgive me. And when that is done, then the healing process begins. And I think that is the way to go about it. There is another, those of you who are Catholics, I do not know whether you have seen the clip that is going around by Pope Francis. And Pope Francis is saying, when you have power, you must be humble. Those whom God has given the privilege of having power must exercise that power in humility. That is what we don't have in Africa. You know, Nigeria's Chinua Achebe, in his book, The Trouble with Nigeria, says that the African leader is a unique animal. When he is moving, he moves with fanfare. And he moves, when he has a motorcade, it's a motorcade that has no security value at all. It is simply pomp and circumstance, complete with the sorcerers and witch doctors sometimes. Sometimes that is an exaggeration, but it tells you why Africans exercise power in a dangerous way, and that is what leads to conflict. And I hold the view that going forward, this country must be a country that leads on the basis of humility. One China policy. From a platform position such as mine, it is very tempting to give simple answers, but they are very complex issues that one must be slow to talk about without understanding the history of a nation. I know that China, the Taiwanese, you remember how the Taiwanese ran away from mainland China and went into Taiwan. We remember how China lost Macau to the Portuguese. We remember how China lost Hong Kong to the British. And you remember that the whole idea is that the entire Chinese community must come together. And for that reason, because China has become very powerful economically, most countries take the view that the only recognized Chinese territory is the People's Republic of China with a seat in the Security Council, and Taiwan does not even have embassies in other parts of the world. My own view is that that is a domestic Chinese problem that must be solved by the Chinese, and then they'll come to the world to tell the world how they want to relate. That is the way. But the other thing that we must say is that the Chinese are to be loved and to be hated at once. Why must they be loved? They are industry. The Chinese know what they want. The Chinese are already planning how they'll deal with Africa 100 years from today. You remember I was telling somebody just that the Chinese had a one-child policy. Last year they said that they now will allow Chinese to have 2 children. And I was telling somebody the second child is meant to come to Africa. That second child in the next 20 years will be here. And I do not blame the Chinese. Every country does that which is in her best interest. What are we doing in our best interest? We must now style up before the Chinese consumers. Unfortunately, Africa is not styling up. Wherever you go in Africa today, the Chinese are building roads, the Chinese are building offices, the Chinese, I went to Zambia, even the Chinese currency, the yuan, the RMB, is the currency which is allowed. And we have seen China rise in the last 30 years. When they come here, we Liberians, like in Kenya, we wonder, we say, this Chinese work very hard. And I'm certain you even say that of the Lebanese. If we, allow me a little latitude. There is a story, and the Muslims who are here, forgive me, because it is to be found, reference in it is to be found even in the Holy Quran in some way. There is a story found in the Bible about a rich man who went out, and when he went out, to one of his workers he gave 5 talents, and to another one he gave 2, and to another one he gave 1. And the writer of that story in the book of Matthew in the New Testament says, he came back after a long time and he called his workers. And to the one that he had given to, he said, Master, I worked the 2 and I now have 4. And the master says, good worker. And to the one that he had given 5, he said, Master, I've worked on the 5 and I now have 10. And he said, good work. And to the one that he gave 1, he said, I knew you. You are a hard-hearted man who wants to reap where you have not sown. So your 1 talent, here it is, I kept it. And then the Bible records, and to those who do not have, even the little that they have shall be taken away from them, and it shall be given to those who have. Many times, our continent behaves like the one who was given 1 talent. How is it that the Democratic Republic of Congo, the richest resource country on earth, with the equivalent of $34.1 trillion of resources under her belly, is the poorest country in the world? How is it that little countries such as Denmark, whose only claim to fame is that they have more cows than human beings, are the ones who are giving us donations? How is it that little Switzerland, with no natural resource, is the one to whom we are writing proposals to give our non-governmental organizations money? How is it that little Norway has a sovereign fund for only 5 million? Their sovereign fund is $890 billion. And Nigeria with oil cannot even produce our own beautiful clothes. They are made in the Netherlands and in Belgium. On the day of judgment, God will ask of us, my little children, I gave you talents. What did you do with it? I gave you land, and instead of tilling your land, because my divine instruction to you was, go ye and subdue the earth. But you of the Negroid race, you have allowed the earth to subdue you. Instead, you are running away in search of the almighty green card. You are running away from the land that I gave you. You are running away from the land that I gave you, the land of the midnight sun, with no snow, with no harsh weather to go into Europe. You, my black children, what are you doing with what I gave you? God will ask us that question. But we have the opportunity to stop it. Because the same Bible, and I'm not preaching, I'm simply reminding us, says that if my children who are called by my name repent, I shall forgive them their sins. He is now calling you and telling you, lo and behold, Liberians, choose good leaders in peace, because when the leaders are good, the people know joy. When the leaders are bad, the people know pain. I'm suggesting to us that throughout the ages, it has always been ours to determine. But we have at critical moments chosen not to do the right thing. Sometimes when I allow my mind a little fertility and it becomes fertile, and I think of the heavenly host and the angelic host having a conversation as they look yonder into the earth, and they look at Africa, and they look at many African countries, and they say the Congolese are killing one another. The Central African Republics are killing one another. Gambia, they can't even decide who won the elections. In Nairobi, they are thinking about tribes. In Somalia, they are killing one another. In South Sudan, they are killing one another. He must wonder, what happened? Did we lose the mold? Was I tired on the day that I dealt with my people, my children? He must wonder. Yet, he made no mistake. Because right now, as I speak to you in Africa, there are countries that are doing well. The color of our skin is innocent. It is not in our DNA. No. It is simply because at critical moments in our lives, as I've said before and I say now, we choose hyenas to take care of our goats. And when the goats are consumed, we wonder. But yet it is in the nature of hyenas to consume goats. The last question is one of corruption. Oh, Africa. The Sudanese poet Alpha Ituri has written a poem where he says, "Oh, Africa, oh, Africa. Art thou forsaken, O Africa? The rebel has destroyed what he once built, but O Africa, you remain unchained and undisturbed, O Africa." Africa is a great continent. That is why throughout the ages, everybody has always wanted to come to Africa. The Greeks were here. The English were here. The Arabs were here. You only go to a land where there is treasure. This is the home of treasure. It is only we who are inhabitants who do not know. That is why we steal our things. How is it that we have things and we steal them? You are given the opportunity to be a watchman and you steal. I can never understand that. Because no matter how, yesterday in Tanzania, the president of Tanzania sacked an official of the anti-corruption authority who was found with over 8 million shillings in his house and 40 apartments in Dar es Salaam. What do you do with 40 apartments? What? Are they trophies? Even if you are to collect rent, what will you do with the rent? Because you can educate your children, what do you do with 40 apartments? In Nigeria, the head of intelligence is found with $45 million in his house. What are you doing with 45 million? Another one is found with $9.8 million and he says his friends gave him. Who are these friends? Sometimes you lose the logic. I was in Kenya on national television 2 weeks ago on an interview, and I said, you people talk, these are thieves, let's call them by their name, they are just thieves. And we are allowing thieves to preside over our affairs because of impunity. The problem in Africa is not that we do not have laws. In fact, in Africa we have very many laws which we don't intend to follow at all. The former leader of Chile, Salvador Allende, once said of Chile that in Chile there are all laws that you need except one law, the law that says we should obey all the other laws. And that is the problem. I'm quite certain that you have an anti-corruption authority in Liberia. It will never prosecute anybody. Even if it prosecutes somebody, that somebody will never be convicted because everybody along the chain is corrupted. It is true in Kenya. It is true in Tanzania. Tanzania is a little better. There is no possibility that they will be prosecuted successfully. And because corruption pays, everybody wants to be corrupt. At one time, somebody was saying that, you eat where you work. That is how they justify corruption. One even figure to you is that it can be done. Has it been done in Africa? Yes. You go to Rwanda, and you can see genuine effort on the part of the government. You go to Botswana. 2 years ago, a cabinet minister who was a friend of President Ian Khama went to him when he was facing prosecution, told the president, Mr. President, I have a problem. I took money, but I want you to help me. The president said no. He went to his rural home. The following day, he was found dead. He had committed suicide. And I said, let us have more suicides. Because you have no business living when you have killed people. One of the things that we don't relate is when somebody is in charge of Ministry of Health and he takes money away and buys generic drugs and placebos from India, he is a mass murderer. When somebody is in charge of construction of a road and he takes out a layer of that road so that he may build an apartment in Florida or in Dubai or in South Africa, there will be an accident on that road. That individual is a murderer. When an individual is in charge of the Ministry of Education and does not provide money for education, with the consequence that you have mass failure in Liberian schools in the West African examination, he is murdering a whole generation. And one is suggesting, therefore, that going forward it can be done. It is not the truth that Africans don't do it. Tanzania is a good example. The president is doing it. Botswana is a good example. The president is doing it. And we have a number of... Namibia is a good example. The president is... and the leadership is doing something about it. But the people must also be vigilant. You must not be afraid. Right now, for the last 51 days, I gave this example in the morning, in Venezuela, if you watch television, they have been on the streets for the last 50 days. They are demanding that their president must go. And I predicted that in the next 100 days he will go. Because the people are vigilant. But if the people are just in their houses and complaining, the leaders are not bothered. They know you'll do nothing. But if you come out and make it known, the civil society, from the pulpits in the churches, let me conclude by saying this. The churches and the mosques are very powerful platforms. And I will demonstrate to you throughout history people like Desmond Mpilo Tutu in South Africa, Alan Busak in South Africa, Janani Cardinal Lumumba in Uganda, Jaime Cardinal Sen in the Philippines. These were people who used the platform to good effect, the platform of the pulpit. The imams can do the same thing because they have moral authority. The civil society, the press. The press in Africa has a duty. The problem we have in Africa now about the press is the news of brown envelopes. As long as members of the press are not carriers of the truth, the society is doomed. You must speak the truth at all times without fear of consequence. I said in the morning that there was a president in your neighborhood called Joseph Momo, you'll remember him, of Sierra Leone. He once said, I didn't agree with him on many things, but on this one I agreed, that the journalist with a pen in his or her hand is like a soldier with an AK-47. He can use it to defend or to destroy. So the journalists must use their power responsibly. Corruption can be eliminated, and corruption will be eliminated if we have good leadership, if we have good judges, if we have good legislators. In many African countries, Africa is the only continent where the political representation is permanent and pensionable. I've never understood why a parliamentarian should have pension. Why? This is an elective post. In Cuba for a long time, parliamentarians were not full-time. If you are a doctor, you only served and you got an allowance for sitting. But in many countries, the Kenyan parliamentarians are the best paid in the world relative to our GDP. And I keep on complaining, people are killing each other to get into parliament because it's the easiest way to make money without any effort. Political office in Africa is the avenue. When you are elected into political office in Africa, you have won a lottery. You have won a lottery. So ladies and gentlemen, one can go on and on, but I want to conclude by simply saying the duty to make our countries good is a divine and a patriotic duty, and we must discharge that duty without fear of consequence. History has demonstrated and continues to demonstrate consistently that where the population is vigilant, the levels of democracy and the quality of leadership improves. Julius Kambarage Nyerere used to say this, that the secret of development are young men who are properly bred, young men with a vision, and young men and women with passion. Once you have that combination, that is the recipe for success. So you young men who are here, do you have proper breeding? Do you have passion? Do you have the enthusiasm? If you have, then God will save Liberia. God will make Liberia great. And it can be done. It must be done. Because if it is not done, you are done.
If it is not done, you are done. What more could the professor say? At this time, we don't have time. We will call on Ambassador D. Momo Taylor Jr. to do our announcement and vote of thanks.
All right, thank you. We'd like to extend thanks and appreciation for you gracing this occasion for the last 2 days, in fact, the last day and a half. The reason why I say that is because at this time in Nairobi, it is completely dark. And so, once they thank you for coming, from here we will all just we ask our distinguished guests, along with our traditional leaders, to move at the table of dinner so that we can be served and will not be serving as waiters. And so we'll be dining at the table of brotherhood. All right, so our distinguished guest will be seated, and then that will be coordinated by Amos. And then why the band will be giving us preludes of African music, not Western, not the one from America, especially one from Liberia. And then tomorrow morning, we're going to take Professor Lumumba around the cover of Monrovia to see a few of our historical sites and to see whether we can see and taking around some of the massacre sites to see some of the atrocities that took place in the 90s. And then from there, by 12, we expect that at that time we'll get a call from the resident of the president so that he can pay an official visit. By 2:15, 2:30, we'll be leaving from the airport. And then, of course, short interaction. And then 3:10, he leave from Nairobi. So thank you for coming. May God bless us all, to all who contributed to this program. There are still some issues, but we are cognizant of the fact that we're going to work along to make sure all those issues are resolved before we leave from here. Thank you very much. Thank you to our speakers. May God bless us all and save Mama Liberia.
Please form the queue. The food is enough, don't worry. Please form the queue.
Once.
Please form the queue.
Yeah.